All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Awesome. So today we're tackling something that's become, well, kind of essential in the modern workplace, especially for those of you in the IT world, agile leadership for remote teams.
Definitely a hot topic these days.
Right, and I'm sure a lot of you out there are either leading those teams, part of them, or at least curious about how to make remote work, actually work.
Yeah, it's not always easy.
Exactly. And that's where this deep dive comes in. We're going to be looking at a company called GitLab. They're doing some pretty incredible things in the tech world, and they're 100% remote.
Fully remote, no offices anywhere.
Wild, right. But here's the thing. They're thriving. And they credit a lot of their success to agile leadership.
It's a game changer for them.
So let's unpack that, shall we? What are some of the biggest challenges remote IT teams face? I mean, I can think of a few right off the bat.
Oh yeah, where do we even begin? Communication can be a nightmare sometimes. You've got different time zones, different communication styles.
Misunderstandings galore.
Definitely. And then there's the whole technical side of things, keeping everyone connected, making sure they have the right tools, troubleshooting problems remotely.
Ooh, tech issues are the worst, especially when you can't just walk over to someone's desk and help them out.
Right. And then, of course, there's the challenge of maintaining productivity. It's easy for people to feel isolated and disconnected when they're working remotely.
So how does agile leadership come in to solve all of these problems?
Well, at its core, agile leadership is all about adaptability, collaboration, and iterative progress. It's about being flexible enough to respond to change quickly, empowering your team to work together effectively, and constantly striving to improve.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that could be helpful in a remote setting. But how does this actually play out in the real world?
Well, that's where GitLab comes in. Remember, they're fully remote and they're incredibly successful. And a big part of their success is due to their unique approach to agile leadership.
So what's their secret sauce?
They've actually outlined 5 key principles that guide their agile leadership approach.
As principles, okay, I'm all ears.
The first one is radical transparency.
Radical. That sounds intense.
It is. They make almost everything accessible to everyone in the company. We're talking about meeting notes, project updates, strategy documents, financial information, even company-wide decisions.
Wait, seriously, they share everything. Isn't that a bit risky?
You might think so, but GitLab believes that this level of transparency builds a huge amount of trust within the organization. And when you have trust, people are more likely to feel connected, engaged, and motivated, even when they're physically separated.
That makes sense. No more whispers in the hallways or secret meetings.
Exactly. Everyone's on the same page no matter where they are. All right, ready for principle number 2.
Hit me with it.
Collaboration, but not just your typical let's work together kind of collaboration. GitLab fosters a culture where everyone, and I mean everyone, is encouraged to contribute ideas, offer solutions, and really have a voice in the process.
Interesting. So it's not just about working together, it's that actively seeking out input from every single team member.
Precisely. They believe that the best ideas can come from anywhere, and that a diversity of perspectives is essential for innovation. And this is especially important in a remote setting where it's easy for people to feel siloed.
Makes sense. Okay, what's next?
Principle number 3 is all about iteration. It's about breaking down those massive, daunting projects into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Ah, kind of like those agile sprints we hear so much about.
Exactly. Instead of aiming for one huge launch, they focus on making continuous progress through a series of smaller steps.
Gotcha. So it's like a cycle of developing, testing, gathering feedback, and then refining.
Exactly. This allows them to be incredibly adaptable and responsive to change. They can adjust their course quickly if something isn't working, and they can constantly improve their processes along the way.
I like that. It keeps things moving and prevents those massive setbacks that can really derail a project. Okay, we've got transparency, collaboration, and iteration. What's next on GitLab's list?
This one's a biggie, especially for remote teams: autonomy. GitLab trusts its employees to make decisions, own their projects, and take initiative.
Ah, so no micromanaging happening over there.
None. They believe that empowering their team members leads to great ownership, motivation, and ultimately better results. And it makes sense, right? When people feel trusted and valued, they're more likely to go the extra mile.
Absolutely. Plus, who wants to be micromanaged? Nobody. Okay, so that's 4 principles down, 1 to go. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
It's all about continuous improvement. GitLab is constantly looking for ways to refine their processes, enhance outcomes, and stay ahead of the curve. They don't just settle for good enough.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Definitely not. It's a mindset, a commitment to always learning and growing. They encourage experimentation, they embrace feedback, and they're always looking for ways to do things better.
That's inspiring. But okay, let's get practical here. How do they actually make these principles work in a remote setting? I mean, it's one thing to talk about transparency and collaboration, but how do you actually do it when everyone's scattered all over the place?
That's where their use of technology comes in. They've got a whole suite of tools that help them implement these principles effectively.
Oh, I bet. Give us the rundown.
Well, for transparency, they use a collaborative workspace called Confluence. Think of it as a central hub where all information is stored and accessible to everyone.
So meeting notes, project updates, strategies, all in one place.
Exactly. No more digging through emails or shared drives trying to find that one crucial document. Everything is right there, open and transparent.
Okay, that makes sense for transparency. What about collaboration? How do they make that happen remotely?
They use a tool called Miro, which is like a giant digital whiteboard. Teams can use it to brainstorm, visualize ideas, and work together in real time, regardless of location.
Ooh, I've heard of Miro. That sounds pretty cool.
It is, and for managing those iterative sprints we talked about, they use a project management tool called Jira.
I've used Jira before. It's great for keeping track of everything.
Right. Teams can break down tasks, assign responsibilities, track progress, and make sure everyone is aligned, even when they're working asynchronously.
So it's like having a virtual office space where everyone can stay connected and on top of things. But how do they make sure those feedback loops are actually happening, that are actually continuously improving?
It's built into their culture. They have regular check-ins, performance reviews that focus on growth and development, and open communication channels where anyone can voice concerns or suggestions.
So feedback is encouraged and valued.
Absolutely. But there's another key element here: celebrating those small wins along the way.
Yes. The importance of recognizing achievements, no matter how small, especially in a remote setting where it's easy to feel like you're just plugging away on your own.
Right. Celebrating those small wins keeps the momentum going, boosts morale, and reminds everyone that their work is valued. It helps to create a sense of community even when people are physically separated.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can they learn from GitLab's success? I mean, it's pretty clear that remote work is here to stay, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the big lesson here is that agile leadership isn't just a buzzword. It's a practical, actionable approach to leading effectively in a remote environment.
And GitLab is a perfect example of that. They've proven that distance doesn't have to be a barrier to success. In fact, it can even be an advantage.
Exactly. But it all comes down to how you lead.
Right. So I guess the question for our listeners is, how can they adapt these principles to their own unique context? It doesn't have to be a complete overhaul.
Right. Of course not. Even small changes can make a big difference. Maybe start by incorporating more transparency into your communication, or experiment with tools that facilitate asynchronous collaboration.
Yeah. Or empower your team members with greater autonomy on a specific project. It's all about finding what works best for your team and your goals.
Exactly. The important thing is to be intentional about it. Think about those 5 principles: transparency, collaboration, iteration, autonomy, and continuous improvement. How can you weave those into the fabric of your team's culture, even if you're not fully remote?
Great advice. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Agile leadership isn't just a concept. It's a practical approach with real-world results.
And GitLab is living proof of that.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, here's a final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. Could embracing even just one of these principles significantly impact your team's performance? It's something to consider as you navigate the ever-evolving world of remote work.
Food for thought.
All right, that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.